can you talk a little bit about your perspective on caring for the forgotten, basically, and how you come at that issue, basically? Because in America, there can be an attitude of shut up and get a job, stop complaining.
Yeah.
Some people would have that attitude.
Yeah.
How do you see that?
Well, of course, I chose to come to Mississippi, for obviously several reasons. It was a nice place, it was a nice climate, it was part of a country that my family spoke very highly of, and the big thing was the big challenge here was the integration of the communities. That was the big thing back in the 60s. And I came here and I found that it was a very segregated society here.
Yes.
And I thought, that I was obligated to address it, preach about it, and I did. And I was actually called on the carpet very early on for speaking about a subject that I was told that I didn't have any business talking about. I was called on the carpet by my own superiors, my bishop. He got a complaint that I, as a young Irish priest, was speaking about civil rights. In particular, I made a reference to, I think it was to the integration of the college campuses in Arkansas or something like that. And I was, my bishop was informed by a parishioner that I was speaking about a subject that I had no business talking about. And he told my bishop that it would be like him going home at the time to the north of Ireland, talking about the IRA and the situation, the political situation. Which
is exactly what the Americans did, by the way.
Yeah.
But go on.
And so, like I say, I was called on the carpet for doing that. And I, by the grace of God, I knew what I had said, and I certainly defended what I had said.
Of course.
I believed what I had said. I had, in particular, I had said that as Christians today, we have to be concerned about the big problems of today and the integration of the societies and
face up to it.
Pardon me?
And face up to that.
And face up to that. But at the time, there was a policy in this diocese and in many other dioceses here that it was such a hot issue. Priests were not supposed to speak about civil rights unless they had prior permission from their bishop.
That's shocking.
And it was to me it was shocking. That really hit home. And I was investigated for what I said. Luckily, everything I said was in writing and I could back it up.
Wow.
And
because you write your notes before you speak.
Right, I had notes, and as a young priest, I kind of depended on my notes. I didn't just ad lib from the pulpit. And even when the bishop found out what I had said, he wrote back and said that, well, perhaps Father Kelleher diverged from his notes, which I didn't.
You didn't.
And as it turned out, it all worked out well in the end. But, the official church, officially the church was preaching, yes, we've got to integrate our churches, our communities, but at the same time it was way behind the times.
Well, they had to please their parishioners at the same time.
Yes.
They're trying to balance those needs.
Yes, but this
which isn't right necessarily.
This was the 60s, this was the 60s, in fact. This was the late 60s. The hippies were on the move in California, and the Vietnam War was getting fired up, and there was revolution in the air, and I kind of loved the idea of radical ideas floating around like that, and I had
Would you call yourself a lefty?
In my beliefs, yes, but like I wasn't practicing radical stuff,
yes,
or preaching radical stuff.
Yes. You just said at dinner there, you talked about a fella who was disciplined in Mexico, or you disciplined in Mexico. Talk to me about that.
Oh, he was
Similar-
a Jesuit priest. I think he was preaching maybe liberation theology.
Romero and all that.
Probably, yes. And he was expelled from Mexico one time, and he went back illegally, and I think he was expelled a second time from Mexico.
He went back to Mexico illegally.
He did. He was. Jesuits are tough.
They are tough. Well, at their best.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I admired people like that.
Of course. And this beautifully brings me to your role in a big moment in the history. We have some pictures here of Hurricane Katrina, and this is Father Mike's this is a massive moment here. Is that fair to say? Can you just tell us about these pictures?
Well,
or is there one in particular that you want to look at?
This would be the one. This is the church.
If you can show that to the camera.
And we had 52 inches of water coming up from the Gulf of Mexico here, and it was quite a scary experience. And I thought for sure, if the floodwaters, got to be extreme like that, I could go to the church, go up into the belfry, and I'd be okay. But when I looked out my front door and saw this, the water was being pushed up from the south here with such tremendous force. There were big old trees, dead animals and everything.
Yeah.
It was only like from here to the front door of the church about 50 yards. I wouldn't have made it. I would have been swept away and probably drowned.
That'd be the end of you.
That'd be the end of me. But mercifully, when it got to this height, 52 inches, as I said, the flood, the tidal surge was over, and it stayed at that maybe for 5 minutes, and then it began to recede.
Okay.
And but
it's like something in an action movie. Like 5 minutes. It was that immediate.
It wasn't immediate. It was like it took about 2 hours to seep in from the cracks in the wall, and to reach 52 inches, and then it stopped, and it stayed at that level for maybe 5 minutes, and then it began to recede. It took another a couple of hours for it to be completely sucked out. And of course, by the time it got sucked out, everything was gone. Everything in the house, everything that we had stored up, the refrigerator, the furniture, everything was gone, finished. It happened instantly.
And funnily enough, we were joking earlier, you have a thing about safes. There's a couple of lads living here and you bought safes for them. So is that have something to do with that stress, that trauma?
Yes and no, maybe. They were for the personal items of the people in the house here, but even the safe that I had then was no good. The water got into the safes too. Everything was ruined.
Destroyed everything.
Destroyed. Yeah. And that was the biggest shock of the hurricane. Like, you have a good life, and the hurricane came, and within a matter of a few hours, everything, your car, your food, your house, everything you have, your clothes is gone. Everything is gone, and it's back to primitive survival skills. And
let's talk about that. It reminds me of Hobbes, The State of Nature. People reduced to barbarianism, like being dramatic about it, but there was some looting and that.
And that's always the case after a hurricane. You have to be careful with it. Unethical people, like 20 miles north of here, it wasn't affected like that. So you had unethical people coming down here, realizing that everything was floating around and nobody around to claim anything. So they came looting. Looting it's almost a natural event that happens after a catastrophe like that. And just down the road from us, one of the parishioners said, "You loot, we shoot."
No tolerance.
No tolerance. He's doctor now, the guy that put it up there, a friend of mine.
Same fella. And he's the most gentle looking man I've ever seen.
He is.
But he's made of thick skin at the same time.
You have to almost. There's no law.
It's like what we were talking about earlier, that lawlessness.
Yeah, the roads are impassable, and
so there were people manning the streets, weren't there? Because
right,
a lot of people evacuated.
a lot evacuated, but like half of them didn't evacuate.
Yeah.
They stayed home,
And you have never left for a hurricane, is that correct?
No. My nephew was with me and his girlfriend. They're taller than you are. They were both college kids from Dublin, and I remember in the height of the storm when the water was coming in, I asked them if they could swim, and they said yes, we're good swimmers.
Were you joking or serious?
No, I was very serious, and when I heard that I kind of felt a little comfort, that at least we can grab onto something and hang on there. And
it's like the Titanic, Jack and Rose.
Yeah.
They're holding on to the bit of water or something. Well, I shouldn't be joking. It was a lot of people died, and a church in Pascagoula was destroyed beyond recognition. Not your one. Now, why am I talking about that? What am I referring to? Obviously,
you're referring to St. Peter's.
Correct. So tell me about St. Peter's and your influence, probably your legacy on Pascagoula.
Well, there are 3 churches in Pascagoula, 3 Catholic churches. The old downtown white church, that was severely damaged, just like my church here was severely damaged. All the inside of the church was ruined, the pews, furniture, everything, but at least the walls were standing and the roof was okay. And but the church in the middle was an Afro-American church, black church, and I think it was kind of shoddily built, maybe not too long ago, before the hurricane, and it was just completely demolished overnight. It didn't survive. I think a tornado hit it and destroyed it. It just made it into a heap of rubble in a matter of seconds, and they were, they were destroyed. We were certainly badly hurt by the hurricane, and so was every church, Catholic, Protestant. They were all in the same boat. And I remember maybe a few days after the hurricane driving by the St. Peter's Church, the black church, and I saw the priest there standing on top of a pile of rubble, and he was almost in tears. Like, you could see he was distraught, and you could see the expression in his face, like, where do we go from here? What do we do? How do we even begin to recover from this? And I remember stopping my car and saying to him, Bill, at least our church is still standing, and you can come out to our church and we can have services out there. And he was out the very next Sunday with his entire congregation.
In your place?
At our place. We'd no pews. We were standing around.
No way.
And of course, half of his congregation had gone, half of my congregation had gone, so we had plenty of room. Like,
oh, they had fled.
Pardon me?
They had fled forever.
They had fled, yes, not forever, but to get out of the way of the storm until they could recover, and it was the beginning of a beautiful relationship between the two communities. They started coming every Sunday for well over a year until they were back on their feet.
And some people, a little bit like what we were talking about earlier, some people didn't have open arms.
Yeah.
You saw beyond that, or you were able to resist that?
Oh yes. It was a surprise to me that even after suffering a great tragedy like that, people, yes, they were coming together in a sense, but they still wanted their own churches back, what they had. They wanted to replace them. And there was a golden opportunity to just abandon the whole thing and build a whole new complex and make it one church for all. And
really? Amalgamate the whole thing?
Amalgamate, yeah.
Wow.
I even mentioned it to the bishop.
Was that a serious possibility?
Oh, I was very serious. I told the bishop that it was a great opportunity, comes once in a lifetime, and he didn't fall for it either. Yeah, I think he knew in the back of his head that that doesn't happen. Whenever a hurricane or any kind of a natural disaster hits, the people always want to get back to what they had before. And
clinging on to stuff.
Yeah.
God, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So the first time I met you was about probably about 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago.
Yeah, you came to that mass when.
Well, yeah, the week after I met you for the first time.
Oh, okay.
I met you for the second time, and that was a mass in St. Peter's.
Right. They wanted to show their appreciation to us for what we did, reaching out to them in their time of need, and they've never forgotten it. To me personally, they've always gone out of their way to thank me for, just reaching out to them, inviting them, and I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was a great opportunity. They were a lovely community,
Yes.
but we had to make a few adjustments. We had to change our time to make it suitable for everyone, and even that was resisted by some of my people.
And it's petty stuff.
Petty stuff, that's right.
And I've heard you say the word bullshit a lot of times. You haven't said bullshit, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there's an awful lot of that, isn't there? With and I don't want to be negative, but with human nature, people are possessive and they don't want to let other people in on what they have, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And you saw a lot of that.
I did.
Through this experience.
Yeah, but the big thing for me was, in every community you have strong leaders. They're either business people, professional
like
people,
the
and they're intelligent people. These are not goofballs that
Yeah.
These are intelligent. They know what's going on, and I'll never forget. Like after the hurricane, when everything was so chaotic, and we were reaching out to St. Peter's, and things were beginning to happen together. So many of these, important, I call them important people in the community, they came to me quietly and said, "I'm so proud of what you're doing. You're doing the right thing." And even though there was criticism coming from other quarters, the fact that these, influential people
Yes.
were kind of telling me quietly in the background,
I get you.
that gave me a great sense of empowerment, if you like, and I felt like $1 million. I felt I didn't care what anyone said. I came to believe that it was the right thing to do.
Yes.
And looking back in hindsight, it was the right thing to do.
And these people made it easier to do the right thing, and that's lovely. Like I'm a big fan of films by Hugh Grant, and one of them, he goes on, "No man is an island."
Yeah,
You couldn't have done this on your own,
that's right. You couldn't.
but you were the man who stood up to be counted, as it were.
Yes, and had good support from the right circles.
Yes.
Without that support, probably I would have been. I don't know that I would have had the guts to do it.
Yeah.
Then I had my own superior, the bishop, and he was supportive, but he was, he had a million other problems, and but he was supportive.
And he let you run with it. I remember you saying at that mass that day, one of you, either you or a priest from the Black Church, said about how you didn't even consult the bishop in the first instance. And typically you would with matters like this.
Right.
But common sense prevailed.
Right. Yeah.
And necessity.
Right.
Was prime.
That was, that, like as soon as the hurricane swept through and destroyed everything, everything was in a state of chaos. I had no place to live. My house was destroyed. Well, I could have packed my bags or, hitched a ride to the next town or something and run away from it. But no, you don't. You stay. Something sets in, like you got to stay. You got to, build back up and do your bit and so on. And I remember, the smart thing to do is get a little house. So I bought a trailer just like that.
Wow.
I didn't consult with any parish council or bishop or anything like that. and I knew we had money in the bank to be able to buy that, and I did. I bought a house, and it was the beginning of the recovery, if you like. Later on, the bishop never made a comment about it. I think quietly he gave me credit for doing it,
Great.
not to be bothering him.
Melton Harris.
Melton Harris, and you're a local politician, is that correct?
I'm elected official.
So what's your memories of Hurricane Katrina?
Well, I think it mentioned a little bit earlier, there's a lot of devastation to the area. Of course, as one of the gentlemen pointed out, it was like a broken mirror. Everybody was confused, not knowing where were they going to go. Of course, one thing about religion, and one thing about a devastating event, sometimes it brings us together. And I remember that more than anything, that we saw individuals who were not acquainted with each other, lost acquainted with each other, begin to come together, work together to restore. And that was a blessing in itself. Sometimes it takes disasters such as that to bring us together. Yeah.
So it's a real silver lining in that cloud of mayhem.
Pardon me?
It was a real silver lining in the situation.
Yes, there was a silver lining in it as a result of it. You know, we have to look, and sometimes God will bring us to our knees to bring us back together.
For an Irish person, sometimes it's very hard to understand the race relations here, and it's more complicated here than in many places. So can you give a little bit of an insight into that?
Right. There's still some division among us. Sometimes we're just accustomed to different traditions, different type things in our lives. Even the singing a song, we may sing it a different way. And sometimes we may feel offended, may not enjoy singing it another way. Sometimes we have to be exposed to different things in all the different ways before we accept it. But that's culture and tradition sometimes that bring those about. But the more we come together, the more we begin to grow together and learn about each other.
As the man in there said, better together.
We're better together and stronger together. You know, there's very little that you can do with 5 fingers, but when you can bring them together, you can lift a lot more and do more greater things, you know. So we're greater together.
Well put, Melton. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.